Estancia Cristina, I'm super stoked to share this with you guys. This has been a property that I've totally been in love with for years and years. When I used to guide trips around South America, I stayed here with groups and loved it for the remoteness, for the history. When I was at Geographic Expeditions in San Francisco managing their Latin America department, this was like one of the ace up our sleeves in terms of properties in Argentine Patagonia. Our clients loved it. We love sending groups there, FITs, and then I'd kind of lost contact with it for a while since I've gone into the rep gig. But first, to set the scene about this is just to talk about the area overall. And I think this is one of the coolest things to actually consider about Estancia Cristina for its location. So we're in Argentina. We're in Argentine Patagonia. This is the area around Calafate. Let me pull up my little laser beam thing. Yeah. So El Calafate is the main town you fly into from Buenos Aires or from anywhere else in Argentina. This is the gateway to Argentine Patagonia. I actually was doing some research on this recently about the amount of people that are coming to Calafate. See this other circle that just popped up? This is the Perito Moreno Glacier. So that is like the iconic place to go see face to face with the Perito Moreno Glacier. I'm looking up statistics for El Calafate. El Calafate gets about 500,000 visitors a year coming here. And about 98% of the people that are coming there are coming in there to spend a night or two in El Calafate just to do a day trip out to see the Perito Moreno Glacier, which is incredible, the amount of tourism that's coming to El Calafate, 500,000 people. And you're talking about a season there that's pretty much between October to April. So you have 500,000 people coming. Now El Calafate, the town of El Calafate, has 8,000 hotel beds, which is absolutely incredible to think about, all kind of centered around this visiting this Perito Moreno Glacier. The thing is that this glacier in this area is surrounded by, this is the Los Glaciares National Park in Argentina. So this is Argentina's largest national park. It's almost 3,000 square miles of land that goes basically from the Chilean border. And on the other side of the border is where Torres del Paine is in Chile. But you basically have the Southern Patagonia Ice Camp, all these glaciers and these lakes making up the park, close to 3,000 square miles. And the majority of the traffic is going just to spend a night or two in Calafate and visiting the Perito Moreno Glacier. The other spot that people are going to is that the next circle you saw that popped up at the top is Chaltén. So it's about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive up and around Lake Argentino and Lake Viedma to get to Chaltén. And this has more traditionally been kind of a trekking and mountain climber and backpacker thing. There's incredible hikes up there into the Fitzroy Range. But apart from that, this is the 3,000 square mile national park, and kind of the tourism is mostly concentrated at Calafate and Perito Moreno, with a small amount going up to Chaltén. And then you'll see the star that pops up here. This is the location of Estancia Cristina. Estancia Cristina sits right in the middle of Los Glaciares National Park. There's nothing else around. I'll show you some other satellite pictures later where you see the close-up of its location next to the Uppsala Glacier. But it has this location that nothing else has in the national park. I mean, it's right in the middle of the national park, and for miles and miles around, there's nothing else to stay at. So I just wanted to set the tone there for showing tourism getting to Calafate. Interesting, during the registration for the webinar, I asked people, have you sold it, and did you sell it as a day trip or as an overnight thing? And it's interesting, people's connection with Cristina. Like, I've always known it as an overnight place. I always sold it as an overnight place. And that's pretty much what it was when I started getting involved in tourism. It was always a place to stay overnight for people. It's really in the last few years that they've started this day trip visitor thing from El Calafate. So there's two ways to do it. You can do it as a day trip, or you go as an overnight guest. I'm representing this property more as for the overnight experience than really pushing the day trip thing. To me, they're two different products, and they're two different experiences. They're two different price points overall. And, you know, a lot of people's feedback as well over the years with Cristina is that, you know, we used to sell it a lot as an overnight thing and guests loved it, but the kind of growth in the day trip visitors really turned us off of selling it and turned off some of our clients, because there was more and more people going out as day trip visitors. And it kind of took a bit away from the overnight guests. So that was feedback that's been happening over the last few years. And then also feedback about people not selling it as an overnight option, is saying because of the logistics of getting out there, the transfer times to get out there by boat, et cetera, that it made it hard to sell. Why I'm starting to represent them this year is that finally they took the feedback they've been getting from people and they've made major changes in this. And I think that the way that the Estancia is being run now is better than ever. And a lot of that comes down to this transfer schedule that they have. based off of that feedback, they have now purchased another boat. So backing up here, in order to get out to Estancia Cristina, you have to get there by boat. There's no road that gets to Estancia Cristina. So the route that you take to get there is people will fly into El Calafate, be in El Calafate. From El Calafate, it's an hour drive, and we do provide a shuttle service from El Calafate here in this transfer schedule where it says depart El Calafate. You leave, and it's about an hour drive out to Puerto Bandera, which is the port where the boat leaves from to get to Cristina. And then from Puerto Bandera, it is a 2-hour ride by boat directly out to Estancia Cristina. However, on the way out there with guests, they do pull up this channel to get to the face of the Uppsala Glacier and then come back around. So it's actually calculated. You'll see that's a 3-hour boat ride on the way out because that accounts for the visit of the Uppsala Glacier. And on the way back, it's 2 hours. So this is the schedule. And previously, all it was the schedule that says day visitors. That was the schedule, and it was impossible to get to Cristina from Buenos Aires in a day. So if you were booking it as overnight guest, you would have to spend time in Calafate before and after a Cristina stay. Starting in 2019 with the new boat, they now have a separate boat private for guests that are coming to stay overnight. And as you see the schedule here, it leaves later. So that boat's not leaving from Puerto Bandera until noon versus 8:30 when the day visitors go out on that boat. And then also coming back, it's coming back earlier. So this is allowing the facilitation that people can make it from Buenos Aires to Estancia Cristina in one day, or they can leave Cristina and make it to Buenos Aires on departure. In terms of these as well, if they are overnight guests coming, the overnight guests can take the day visitors boat out. If they want to get an early start, they're already in Calafate and they want to spend more time out at Cristina, they can go out on the day visitors boat. They don't have to wait for the private for guest one. And vice versa, on the way back, they can take the day visitors boat back. Day visitors not allowed on the private boat. So this one way is completely separates the two experiences of the overnight guest. It's the boat, they might have only 5 to 10 people going that are coming in as overnight guests. Whereas the thing you need to understand about the day trip thing is the day trip experience is actually sold through a lot of agencies in Calafate. And that day trip boat can have like 50, 60, 70 people going out for the day to Cristina. So as I said, I feel like they're separate products. Even talking about price points, you're looking at the day trip experience being anywhere from about $200 to $300, depending upon what program they do going out as a day trip, whereas the overnight rates are around $600 per person per day. So I think knowing everybody that's on this webinar and the type of travel that we sell, the overnight thing is more suitable, I think, for a lot of your clientele than the day trip thing there. So fantastic new schedule that we can separate this now, the day trip visitors and the overnight guests. And then I'm putting this up as well. This was what this was planned off of, was that the schedule with Aerolíneas Argentinas. If you do want to make it from Buenos Aires to Cristina in a day, the way up's a little bit brutal. I mean, taking a 4:40 a.m. flight out of Buenos Aires to get to Calafate. They do have a couple hours when they arrive to kind of check out El Calafate before going out to Puerto Banderas. But on the way back, that flight leaving at 8:30, I actually just did this recently. I left Cristina and then took this 8:30 p.m. departure to get back to Buenos Aires, and it was fantastic. I mean, I had a great full day at Cristina. Got to the airport with like an hour basically to chill out and eat something and check emails and stuff. And then considering that the domestic airport in Buenos Aires is only about 15 minutes from Recoleta. I mean, I was checked in, I was in my hotel room prior to midnight, so it works really well. So there is a way you can connect this now between Buenos Aires and Cristina in a day without having to add on additional nights in El Calafate. So taking you on a trip out there, this is departing. The thing about the boat ride out there is absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, it is worth doing it even as a day trip. I definitely urge people to consider sending guests out there for overnight though. But when you're going out there, I mean, you're passing these incredible icebergs that are coming off of all these glaciers in the area. This is my favorite picture just to kind of give the scale of what this trip is like going out by boat. Here you can see the boat down on the bottom right of the screen and the background. So you're navigating for 2 hours through this channel through the most striking, incredible Patagonian scenery, and there's nothing else out here. So the whole thing of getting to Cristina, this is in the boat pulling up to Cristina. You can see the buildings of the Estancia here and the backdrop, which is called Cerro Norte. You'll see this peak a lot in pictures. Taking the boat out here, it's just hard to describe how remote and isolated Estancia Cristina is. And I mean, what a stunning location the property is at. You know, and that really lends to that experience when you sleep there overnight, to like go to this most remote area of the world and spend a night or two out there. You really disconnect yourself from the modern world, which is an incredible feeling to do that. Arriving at Estancia Cristina, so depending upon if you know, the day trip visitors, when they come, the day trip visitors come, and depending upon what program they're going to do, which I'll talk about a bit more later, they'll be met by the guide staff and then taken off to do one of the 3 different day trip experiences. The overnight guests, they're coming later, they're met by the staff and taken straight to their rooms and to the estancia. Pretty much the buildings that are available for the day trip visitors are one area, and then the overnight thing is separate. So you don't have day trip visitors going anywhere where the overnight guests are staying. We do have overnight guests that choose to take the day visitor boat out. So on that shared service earlier in the morning, what's a nice touch is that the captain meets them in Puerto Bandera and escorts the overnight guest up into the upper cabin with reserved seating right behind where he sits. And then when they arrive at the estancia, they basically announce, they say, we're going to allow our overnight guests to get off the boat first. And those overnight guests get off the boat. They're met by the lodge staff and taken to their rooms and the property directly. So again, it's second, as soon as you arrive, the kind of day visitors and the overnight guests are completely separated from one another. So here's a couple pictures, again, just talking about the setting of where Cristina is. So it's in this beautiful valley, which is now called the Cristina Valley. I mean, just stunning, stunning setting. Look at that backdrop of those glaciers on there. And here's a little close up. You can see the river flowing behind it, the Catarina River that flows through the property and down out to the lake. That peak behind in the left, that rocky thing, is called Cerro Carnero, which is one of the excursions I'll show you later. One of the coolest things about Cristina in terms of a lodging option and something that's really unique for Patagonia is that this is a historic hacienda. This was founded by a family, the Masters family, in 1914. They actually arrived there earlier. But this picture here, this black and white photo, that's actually Cristina. She was the daughter of the family. So they were an English immigrant family that came to Argentina looking for land to raise sheep on. And they ended up here. They ended up getting this piece of land. And I mean, you come out here by modern boat and you're just like, wow, I am in the middle of nowhere. I can't believe how far of a boat ride that was in this setting. But to imagine doing this under like small steamboats, maybe with an outboard motor back at, you know, in the 1900s with 2 small kids, and then being dropped off here and being like, here's your land, here you go, raise some sheep. I mean, it's literally incomprehensible to think about the fortitude it took of these pioneers to land in a place like this and make a living. And so this family, the Masters family, lived there from 1914, and it was passed down through the generations. And the last remaining member of the Masters family died actually in 1997. So they lived there from 1914 to 1997, about 3 generations of the family. And one of my favorite parts of the estancia is that in the old sheep shearing shed, which we're looking at right now, they've converted it into a museum, which is the museum of the story of Estancia Cristina. And it goes through the history of kind of the explorers that first came out here, but most of it's over the time period of the Masters family living here and operating a sheep ranch. Really cool displays. When this area was turned into a national park, obviously they had to stop their sheep operation. And then started to work towards tourism. And so these displays here kind of go over that transition period. And a part of it, how they got involved in tourism once the park was we had a lot of visiting climbers that came here. So a lot of expeditionary climbers. And this was really cool. When I sent out the registration link to everybody, I got emails from both of these guys in this picture, and they sent me some old pictures. This is on the left is Al Reed, who is owner and president of Exa Mountain Guides in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And on the right is Jim Sano. And Jim Sano was the president at Geographic Expeditions. When I worked there, he now works for the World Wildlife Fund running their travel program. But they had both sent me emails that said, this is amazing that you're talking about these new boats and how the accessibility is with the Cristina nowadays. They said, I don't know if you know of our history of it, but we actually went there and started working with the Masters family by the request of Yvon Chouinard, who was the Yvon Chouinard is the founder of Patagonia Clothing Company. Yvon had visited Cristina back in 1968 on his Fitzroy expeditions and got to know the Masters family and talked with them about their switching to tourism. And it was Yvon Chouinard who talked to Jim Sano and Al Reed how they could get involved in this project to help the the family convert to tourism. And so, you know, they just sent me these pictures saying this is how we used to get there. We used to fly into the coast and then do about like a 20-hour bus ride on dirt roads with multiple flat tires to get there. And they sent me this picture of the estancia from 1989 before any of the rooms were built for guests there. But that was a cool thing. So have a really amazing history, not just the Masters family, but kind of the conversion to tourism once the national park was established. This is going to present day. And again, just looking down at the property and seeing the glaciers behind it, the lake. I mean, I could show you a million pictures, but just to get the sense of where this place is and location is incredible. You have to be there in person. But what's nice in this picture is this is a really good overview to show. These are the different guest rooms. So there's these 5 different cottages that each have 4 rooms. This is the octagonal, which is the common area. This is all for overnight guests exclusively. Over here, this is the museum and the shearing shed, which is incredible. I mean, the museum is a good half-day thing to go through there, and the guides do a great job of explaining, kind of talking you through the chronological timeline. And then here this is called El Quincho, and that's where the day trip visitors have a lunch. The day trip visitors aren't allowed to come over to this area. This is all exclusive for overnight guests. This is actually a guide house there. And again, another shot. This is looking back up the valley towards Cerro Norte and the estancia now in present day. So talking about rooms there's 20 rooms in total. They're all the same. There's not different room categories here. They're all the same. They're 340 square feet each. So each one of these buildings has 4 rooms inside of it, all 4 independent rooms. This isn't like a shared space thing. They're kind of set up that you walk in, and where it says living room, that's more of kind of like a mud room. And then off of that, you have entrances to the 4 rooms. It works really well that, say if we'd had a family with 2 rooms or even 2 couples, this would serve as a lockout door. And so you could leave your own individual room doors open and they would connect through. But most of the time, these are all, booked out individually. They all have individual ensuite bathrooms as well. It's not like this is shared, but just to show you how each of the buildings is set up with 4 rooms each in it. So just a couple shots of the rooms to give you a sense of idea. Again, this place isn't an over-the-top luxury property like some others you might be, used to, maybe more on the Chilean side of Patagonia, but it's very, very well done. It kind of blends in with the vibe and the remoteness of the estancia. Super cozy and warm place. Here's a couple of pictures of the bathroom as well, just to give you a sense of the rooms, the accommodations there for overnight guests. But to me, the simple favorite thing of these rooms is curling up here in the window and just like watching the clouds move across the mountains here. This property is run by generator. There's no electricity that gets out here, so it is generator run. A nice thing, I didn't even realize that, like staying out there, because they also have a solar system. So when the generator turns off, I think they turn it off around midnight. If you get up in the middle of the night, you'll click your light and it's still going to work because it switches to solar electricity after that as well. So beautiful accommodations. Obviously, there's no TVs here. There's no Wi-Fi in the rooms. There is Wi-Fi in the common area, but these rooms are just like cozy, wonderful, beautiful refuges to sit and look out at the scenery from. This is called the octagonal, the octagon, or this is like basically the lounge area and restaurant for the overnight guest. And again, day trippers are not allowed to come here. This is only for the overnight guests that are staying there. This is the upstairs little sitting area, incredible collection of like coffee table books about Patagonia and the history of the estancia that are there. And then downstairs is where the dining area and bar is. So great food and wine. This is not the type of property where we have like a 5-course chef's tasting menu. This is like hearty ranch food, beautifully well done. To my opinion, this kind of fits the bill perfectly in terms of the location of it. They do have their own greenhouses there, so most of the greens are grown on site, and then it really focuses on Patagonian fare, so like fresh salmon from the property and beef from the surrounding producers. So at the end of the day, a good hiking, you're rewarded with a great bife de chorizo and a good bottle of Malbec wine. Really fits the bill there. So that was a bit about the infrastructure in terms of overnight guests. And then I'm going to move on to talking about the excursions, which is one of the more interesting aspects. So the excursions, I'm going to talk you through them. This is the most popular. So the Uppsala Glacier here is a more focused in picture looking at the Uppsala Glacier. So this is what people are coming to see, is the Uppsala Glacier. This is South America's largest glacier. So this is all spilling off of the southern Patagonia ice cap. Most popular thing is to get up and see this, obviously, when you're a guest. So one thing that people do as a day trip visitor, they can sign up for it's called the Discovery Day Trip Experience. And they get to do this, which is basically a 4-wheel drive people up to the overlook. And then once you get there, it's about a 20-minute walk. So these are the vehicles that Estancia Cristina has. Really cool 4-wheel drive vehicles with cabs on the back. And it's about a 9-mile drive up onto this ridge, which is an old glacier moraine, to get up to the viewpoint to see the Uppsala Glacier. And I mean, these pictures that can't do justice for just how vast. I think this is probably one of the coolest lookout points I've ever been to in my life. Getting up here, looking up the Uppsala Glacier onto the southern Patagonia ice cap. And this is more of a wide angle shot of looking at the other feeder glaciers that are coming down off of the ice cap into the Uppsala, Lake Gutierrez below. Here's a bit of zoom in, looking up at some of those feeder glaciers and the hanging glaciers and the fog coming off of the ice cap. It's just mind blowing, the views looking up at the Uppsala. Here's another one a bit closer in. Just awesome spot. And then when you turn around and look the other way, you're looking at Cerro Norte and down in the valley where Cristina fits. So it's just like the views are ridiculous here. So as I said, this is like the 4-wheel drive driving up here. It's called the Discovery option. That if you're doing a day trip, the Discovery option, then they'll just drive back down to the Estancia, probably do the museum, have lunch, and then leave, is like the Discovery option. If you're an overnight guest here, you do this at a different timing. Like you'll maybe have come in the night before, done something in the afternoon, and then the next day you'll probably go early up with the guides and the 4x4s up to this viewpoint long before the day trip visitors even get to the Estancia. So again, it's just be like your guest and a guide, or maybe with a couple other overnight guests that are doing this excursion as well, that they drive up to get to the viewpoint to see the Uppsala Glacier. Look at this view too. This is also looking up from that same spot, but back down into the Lago Pearson and into the valley. I mean, it's unbelievable, the landscape and scenery you have here. Another excursion, basically the same excursion of going up to see the Uppsala Glacier, you tack on what's called the trekking thing. So like saying the excursion, this is the Uppsala Discovery, is the drive up, viewing the glacier and then coming back down in 4x4 for people that aren't super active. Or they can opt to do what's called the trekking excursion, which after you come up to this viewpoint, you walk down what's called Fossil Canyon, back down to the property. So it's an 8-mile hike, all downhill. And so you can combine this by going up in the 4x4 and then walking down. That, if you were coming as a day visitor, that would be called the trekking option for the day trip visitors. But if you're an overnight guest, like I said, you'll be doing this independent of the day trip visitors, going up with your guide, doing the viewpoint, and then doing this hike down to the property. This is by far the most famous hike on the property itself, with the fact of getting to see the Uppsala Glacier. And then you drop down what's called the Cañón de Fósiles, or Fossil Canyon. And it's like this, it's just bizarre because you've been up looking at these glaciers and the ice cap, and then you walk down this canyon, which has been carved out by glaciers, and it's like red rock, it turns to black rock. You're going through all these layers of like seabed deposits, and it's just full of incredible fossils everywhere you go. So you go down through this red part here, and there's one type of fossils, and then a couple 100 feet later, you get where there's these like huge, enormous, like sea snail type fossils, and the guides are able to talk about, you're basically going down through millions of years of history geologically as you pass down through this canyon. Here's another one. These were actually, yeah, like seashells, but it's like the deposit was formed in the shape of a whale. So this walk is cool, going down through this canyon, and then you pop out into the valley where Cristina is, and you end up back at the hotel. In terms of shorter walks, the shortest walk really there, apart from just kind of wandering around the shoreline and walking around the Estancia, is going up to a waterfall there called Cascada de los Perros. And this is, and again, if people are coming as day trip visitors, that's what's called the Discovery thing, Discovery option. So it's a short walk. It's only a 1.5 mile walk to get there, and then a 1.5 mile back, and a small ascent of about 700 feet. What's nice about this is that it doesn't, it's not so tiring, but you get up and you get a nice little view looking down at the Estancia from afar and looking back at these hanging glaciers, and you get up to see Cascada de los Perros, which is cool. And this was actually taken in fall, so this isn't a lot of water in this picture, but during the springtime and summertime, it's totally gushing. So that's one of the other options as well for overnight guests. And now I'm going to show you a couple other hikes that are classics there, that these are not offered for day trip visitors. This would be only overnight guests, and that is going out to Mirador Cristina. This is the longest hike, so it's about 9 miles and 2,200 foot ascent to get there. So 9 miles total, out and back. What's cool about this is you're going up through forest of like birch tree, which most of the other walks around Cristina, you're kind of open Pampa area, whereas here you go through these super luxurious birch forests, and then you pop up into this viewpoint. It's called Mirador Cristina. And what's cool about this is you're getting the full length of the valley below, where the Estancia Cristina is down here. You have Lago Pearson. This is that ridge where the viewpoint for the Uppsala is. And actually, this is a good picture where you can see this canyon in here. This is actually the Fossil Canyon. So that Fossil Canyon walk drops down into this canyon, comes out here and hikes back to the property. So these are a couple of views from the Mirador Cristina walk. And so here you just get that, you get the ice cap, you get the glaciers, you get the whole Valley of Cristina below. Here's another one with a telephoto shot from Mirador Cristina. Pretty much anywhere you walk in Cristina, you're by yourself and you have phenomenal views. I mean, in every direction you turn. And this is my personal favorite hike there, Cerro Carnero. I like climbing up things. This is like a non-technical peak that you walk along the lake to get to. So about 6.5 miles total with 1,500 foot ascent. You can extend this to like 8 miles and climb another 1,000 feet up for people that are super active. But I just thought this was the coolest walk, walking away, and you get this huge, like you get the entire panorama of the entire Estancia Cristina area and all the peaks and glaciers there. This is coming up to the top to Cerro Cristina, Cerro Carnero, and here you can see behind me is the Estancia, and you can see the southern patio to ice cap here. This is the Fossil Canyon dropping down. Here's Lago Pearson. Mirador Cristina, the last hike, is kind of up here. You can see that creek which goes into down in the Cascada de los Perros. So it's just like if you're an adventurer and you love the outdoors and exploring, this is your base cap down here, Estancia Cristina, and you have all of this area to explore and roam. It's just awesome. And I mean, that's why you can go here as a day visitor and you're like, wow, this is super cool. What an amazing place. You know, have a lunch and then you're back on the boat. You're spending like 5 hours on a day on a boat. You come out here and spend the night, even for a night, and it's just a completely different experience of like having all of this domain of wilderness is yours privately and no one else around. The only sound out here is the sound of the wind. It's just killer spot to get away from the world. Also available, we have a full stable of horses at Estancia Cristina. This is something that's not offered to day trip visitors. This is only for overnight guests. So there, the stables, there's 2 main gauchos, super cool guys that do the rides there. And we have lots of options. So from the Estancia, you've got, you know, there's not really set like this is that route, that's that route. You can say going to Cascada de los Perros or going to Mirador Cristina, those 2 long hikes that I showed you earlier. You can do this by horseback if you wanted, if you're an overnight guest. You want to go all the way up to Lago Anita, or they also call it Lago Pilsner. You can do that by horse. You can do, you know, a 1-hour ride. You can do full day rides. If you're an overnight guest, it's really whatever you want to do in terms of horseback riding. The gauchos will take you on short rides, longer rides, challenging rides, and just exploring. I mean, you know, this is again just a shot out on the trail, and you know, there are certain areas, trails that go up the valley, but a part of it's just like, hey, let's go see what's up here. Let's go up here and check out the view. It's just open riding territory. The other thing Cristina is really famous for is for its fishing grounds. So if you do have clients that like want to go to Patagonia, want to have some fishing or fly fishing involved, but they're not looking to go to like a specific fly fishing lodge, say a family that half the family is really into fishing and the other isn't, Cristina is a great spot where half the family can go horseback riding and hiking and do other things, and the fishermen can really get their fill. The fishing grounds there, we have 2 things. We have all these lakes are full of brown and rainbow trout. So that's an option for people, serious fishermen. The Catarina River, which flows out of Lago Anita and then down into Lake Argentina. This gets a world-class run of king salmon or Chinook that come up every year, and the fishing season's from November to April. And actually backing up, Estancia Cristina is only open from October 15th to April 15th every year. So pretty much the entire season that Cristina is open is fishable with the exception of the month of October. Incredible fishing there. We don't have specific fly fishing guides here. Pretty much most of the people that are going to come and fish here are people that have experience, and the guides just get them to the river or to the lakes to say these are the prime fishing spots, but we don't have like fly fishing specific guides. If you do want to set that up ahead of time, we work with some outfitters in Calafate where we can make sure to have, you know, top of the line equipment rented and available for them when they arrive in the Calafate, and they can come out with a guide. But it's more so they have access to the fishing grounds here. We do have a couple loaner sets of rods and waders at the property, but most of the serious fishermen that come here are going to either bring their own stuff or we'll arrange to have things rented in Calafate itself. So that was kind of an overview of a lot of the excursions there. One thing I didn't even add there was also the museum as a killer half-day thing. But what I've done is I put together sample itineraries for Christina. I'm going to send these to you in the follow-up after the webinar. I put together 1 night stay, 2 night stays, and 3 night stay, and I have like an easy and active format. So, people that are not super active, looking at the easy itineraries, where that don't require a lot of physical exertion. It just gives you an idea of what a 2 night stay, like what the excursions would look like for a 2 night easy stay. And then I have the 3 night stay, which is showing, all the great hikes. So these are really useful. And I also have this in Word format, so you can just cut and paste it into suggested itineraries. Someone during the registration had asked me, they said, would you mind kind of comparing, going to Estancia Cristina versus doing something like going up to Chalten and the Fitzroys, or if they're considering doing Los Glaciares National Park in Argentina versus going to Torres del Paine, to kind of give a little bit of a considerations or contrast. In terms of the Fitzroys and Chalten, one, you've got a 2.5, 3 hour drive to get up to Chalten from El Calafate versus a 2 hour boat ride. So it's a different thing. Both of these destinations are, really big for people that are active and hikers. So it's going to appeal to similar client profile. The difference is that, you get to Chalten, and Chalten has a couple luxury hotels, a couple, tons and tons of backpacker hostels, a lot of mid-range things. There's a lot of people in the town of Chalten that are going hiking and climbing in the Fitzroys. So at Christina, you have this whole area to yourself when you're an overnight guest at Christina. So there's much less people there, less people on the trails. It really feels like your own private Patagonia. Whereas when you're in the Fitzroys, on these hikes into the Laguna de los Tres and to Cerro Torre and the like, you're going to see a lot of people. Also, having spent a lot of time there in the Fitzroys, the hikes going in, they're pretty demanding hikes. And you also, from the town of Chalten, you got pretty long approach hikes before you even start climbing up to, where the jewels are. That's what's awesome about Christina, is that you don't have to drive anywhere. Except for that 4-wheel drive up to the viewpoint. You pretty much just walk out of the property with your guide or jump on the horse and you go out exploring straight from the lodge and you come back to it. So that's one thing. Torres del Paine, it's not really fair. This is, a different national park in Argentina versus the crown jewel in Chile to talk about. But I'd say they're both, iconic national parks. I would say probably Argentina, Los Glaciares, has less name cachet than Torres del Paine, which everyone's heard about. People maybe, if they're wanting to do Patagonia, or they're flying into Buenos Aires and you don't want to get into the complications of crossing the border into Chile and then back into Argentina and doing open jaw flights, this eases it up a little bit, that you can do, Christina on the Argentine side and not go into Chile. Torres del Paine is a huge park that has a lot more infrastructure there in terms of visitor sites and hikes. Christina can't really touch that. What Torres del Paine offers of it, the majesty of that park and everything that it includes. But Christina is, just keep going back to the crowds, and you have your own private Patagonia coming out to Estancia Cristina. And also most of the hotels in Torres del Paine, these are more modern hotels. You have people that are looking for spas, for the 5-course chef tasting menu, for that level of kind of refinement and lodging, then yeah, Torres del Paine is probably going to be a better spot. Christina is this old historic hacienda that's very well done and very upscale, but it's a historic estancia versus a modern hotel that was built in the last decade. So it's just a really different style of lodging there. Another thing people asked was, how does this, what would you combine Christina with? And I'd say the first thing is, the most simple answer is that people are coming to see Perito Moreno Glacier. They're coming into Calafate, maybe spending a day there. Like, have them come out and spend 2 nights at Christina, or even 1 night at Christina. It makes that visit to Calafate much more than just a simple overnight in Calafate and seeing the Perito Moreno Glacier. It's like, I feel like 2 nights at Christina and a night in Calafate to get out and see Perito Moreno is like the perfect module for visiting that area of the park. Obviously, combining this with Torres del Paine is awesome. It's only a 3.5 hour drive from El Calafate to get to the border and access to Torres del Paine. And then they have really good flight connections. From Calafate, if you're trying to work this into an itinerary, you've got direct flights from Bariloche. So if people are coming from the Lakes District and then want to come down here to kind of the granite and glacier part of Patagonia, you can do that. you want to depart. A lot of flights are leaving Calafate to go down to Ushuaia, so people heading on to either a cruise to Antarctica or through the Beagle Channel, that's an option. Cordoba, and then also maybe combining this with Trelew and Peninsula Adez. I think that's a cool thing because that's coastal Patagonia, and then this is mountainous Patagonia. You'd kind of be seeing both sides of it. So lastly, rates. Again, these is just the overnight rates. I can send you day rates if you want, but my main thing is promoting the overnight options at Christina. Let you look at these rates, but I'm going to send these to you in the follow-up email as well. And that is it. So again, I hope I kind of covered everything and made you guys realize, like, Christina is a place to go spend a couple nights. This is a jewel. It's a historic jewel. The history aspect is one of my favorites. I love histories with character and a history behind them. It really just makes that stay experience so much more meaningful to me. The location's incredible. Yeah, so send your people here. And again, go ahead and enter your questions here, and I'm going to follow up today with all of the sales materials, image galleries, suggested itineraries, and then I'll have a document there with all of the questions asked during the webinar for you. And that's it. So y'all enjoy your day. Thanks for joining me, and we'll be in touch.